Dr. Lee has produced a special booklet for this event. Isn't that amazing? Dr. Lee.
Just a second. Could you? Okay. When I was asked to introduce some experimental works in Korea by Dr. Keniger, I worried about how could I select the right example. Since the term experimental for me is very relative, in other words, so some works recognized as very innovative and experimental in Korean setting may not be true in European setting. And the other thing which I worried about is even though we have lots of experimental and innovative and creative achievement during the 5,000 years of our history, the creativity of Korean people has been suppressed by the tragic historical events such as Japanese colonization and World War II, and then rapid industrialization with a very strict government control for over, during the 20th century. And then even until just now, recent, period, most people have not seemed to recognize their creativity. Creative spirit has been suppressed for over 100 years. This is just a very brief introduction and background in planning this presentation. Ground plane is interpreted as an airplane on the ground which is ready to take off soon, full of gas. Here, creative spirit. Air represents globalization, while the ground represents the regional or cultural context. Therefore, ground plane means the situation where potential creativity and wisdom accumulated in diverse regional contexts is about to be exchanged in this globalized world. The gas filled up in the airplane on the Korean ground, which is about to take off towards the air of the globalized world, can be named as Korean spirit that has been shown in current experimental works done by leading planners and designers in diverse areas in Korea. Since the future especially requires an organic view merged from multidisciplinary approach, Korean team would like to introduce diverse mixture of creative attempts in an organic way. The works of 16 planners and designers in urban planning and design, and architectural design, house planning and design, interior design, and product design, and graphic design, illustration, and fashion design will be very briefly introduced first. This person planned Hailey Art Village, which is first planned village respecting ecosystem. And on the very natural side, he very deliberately reflected the opinions of the prospecting residents who are the professionals in art, design, and cultural area. And all the details are very elaborately planned. And then now the village is under the construction, and then lots of leading architects are working on the houses on this site, and this will be very famous experimental village in Korea soon. And Cheonggyecheon restoration, which is Cheonggye's dream restoration, is a project undertaken to change the image of Seoul, not too much in its developmental perspective, but in its ecological significance. This also contains the series of Seoul's will and attempt to heal our historic and cultural wounds, revitalize the city as a wonderful place to live. This is the before and after view. And then this Cheonggyecheon area has very important cultural value and meaning for all of us Korean people. And this is 1970s view. And then it became a very central part of a commercial sector in Korea, and thereby lots of great oppositions in the process of implementing this project. And this is a new sectional plan. And then these are the before and after images. And then night view. And after the restoration project, the adjacent areas will be developed like this. And this person practiced architecture interior design under the philosophy of John's of Buddhism and civility of Confucianism. And he found great wisdom in traditional Korean architecture, and he expresses his architecture under the name of Architecture of Bright Silence. And unlike the temples in urban area, he tried to make the real contemporary building while having let it have the spirit of Buddhism. And the simple form with no architectural techniques or decoration found emphasized. And then at the end of boundary cannot be easily seen in his work. And this is another example which shows the same philosophy. And he pursues architecture with nothingness that sometimes disappears for nature. And Kim Jong-gyu emphasizes that a designed environment should be integrated into land, surrounding, and society. And he has put much emphasis on what's significant with the building is the relationship of the building with its external environment. And here's one example in urban setting, in very crowded Seoul area, and the other example is in rural setting. And Min Sun-ju, let's see, since she's gonna talk a lot more in detail later, and she spent lots of time to have the general consumers perceive that there are value other than money and square footage, and that she tried to win the confidence of customers in the very competitive architectural market by doing the right architecture. And here's a series of the work she has done. And also you will hear much more in detail about later this. And also she produced very humble architecture to support the object inside of it. And she designed a holistic happiness that includes spiritual health, money, harmony, social value, and cultural pride. This person, actually me, have tried to change the prevailing uniform housing culture by presenting the alternative possibilities of our life setting into the very diverse housing, the culture, and then I did this project in 1995. And then this future housing pavilion includes 3 houses, which is a house 2000, 2005, and 2010, 2030, and house after 2050, based on the predicted information in 57 dimensions and aspects about the future houses. And then also I developed 22 kind of strategies in differentiating those 5 houses. Among them is a differentiation of like a kitchen, how the kitchen will be changing, and home office, and the concept of a garden, and then product used in residential environment, and also the concept of aesthetics. And this is the final plan. And then we named the house 2005 as Adventure. I will just skip the explanation. And then 2005 as Compact New Age, 2010 World View, and 2030 Leisure and Creation, and 2050 as Challenge. Ma Young-bom, he makes a space with an object, and then he expresses space through the material, and the object in his environment expresses with the natural materials to pursue artistry and fulfill the aesthetic function at the same time. And here's some examples of his work, and then another one. And And Min Young-bae, who is the president of IFI, International Federation of Interior Architects, and he have tried to disseminate the beauty of Korean culture throughout the world. And his recent work is the hotel lobby and incorporating our cultural aspect into contemporary way. And Yoo Jung-han, he regards light and nature as a vital factors in the whole process of design. And he created the aesthetics brought about by beautiful fragment of memory and the vivid appearance with all its simplicity and frugality are the attribute of his aesthetics. And his office example, and then the tea shop, and then the restaurant. Ms. Kim Young-se, he strikes a balance between emotion and logic, and he likes to style himself a design evangelist and advocate, pursuing incessant change and speed. And he's going to talk about his work in a more great in detail later. Here's some examples. And Eun Byung-soo emphasized the concept of emptying, which emptying opens up infinite possibilities, allowing anyone to pick it up again. And he tried to reinterpret it, all those traditional living commodities shared, enjoyed by the common people in a very modern sense and contemporary way. Here's some examples of his work and the metal work. And Samsung Electronics took the lead in deviating from the convention to create a new lifestyle and consumer culture in dynamic relations with the consumers. Mobile handphone sets are regarded as a gadget to exchange emotion with the user. They produced lots of things, but among them, they exclusively invented, suggested very handphone exclusively for women, and also a handphone with gravel concept. So Samsung's Anycall makes a good example that shows what a wonderful success creative design could achieve by bravely adopting the trend of globalization and emotion-dominant culture. LG have produced lots of home appliances, and then they really would like to change the current prevailing the lifestyle and environment by suggesting new product. And these are some of their examples, like TV and aircon. And then they suggested two very distinguished future products, which totally suggesting new interface. LG Electronics is committed to lead the home appliance industry in the 21st century by designing products that enable individual consumers or users to realize the meaning and identity of their lives beyond simple convenience and enjoyment. An Sang-soo created a very unique and style font, which is created to have the function of conveying text and enhancing the visual artistic property of letters by different arrangement of letters on paper. And it deviates from a square frame, the so-called innate limitation of a Hangul, which is Korean alphabet, and display a remarkable exceptional visual compared to the conventional printing type. He have thought about what is the look of Hangul in the future that can inform of Hangul's excellence and beauty. And he said some very drastic examples of his graphic work, the posters. And then you will feel some kind of a letter dancing. So he was deeply moved by Hangul that have been created with a long tradition and history, and has been searching for an experimental alternative called the dismantling, which can explain the potential possibilities of future communication media in one with Hangul as a new angle. Kyo-man Kim have presented the visual expressions of Korean traditions and refined the taste and re-established them into new life. Here's some of his illustration work, even for the cathedral. And final person, the Lee Young-hee, she recreated the hanbok and they released them to the modern people and the world market. For her, nature was the source of creative power, and she continuously have experimented very different ways of dyeing. Thereby, she has very unique colors and styles in her fashion design. And she blew life into Hamburg with her sensitive creativity and passion, and she conveys the true beauty of tradition deep into the heart of those living in modern society. Using the access of time, which is a past, present, future, and space, which is a local and global world, 16 designers' work could be classified into 3 categories. Group 1 is the designers who attempt to realize the value of a traditional culture that we have lost in the last 20th century, and pursue to explain tradition with modern design vocabulary and further lead their works into the direction that the people of the world can also share them. The examples of temple, house, and hotel, and office, and bar interior, and product, and then Hamburg, fashion, and typography, and illustration belong to this group. Group 2 is the ones establishing the meaning of good design by carefully considering the meaning of life and cultural value. And this group is the designers who changes shallow design to deep design. And the characteristic which has been tried to restore like sustainability and context and user and spirit and emotion. All those examples showing this falls in this category. Group 3 are the ones that suggest the possibilities and ways of new life by actively responding to the changing digital information society. In this group, like examples of future house and electronic appliance and digital apparatus and mobile handphone belongs to this group. The second characteristic is I found some philosophical similarity across genre of design. Also, the genres are different. The cultural value, norm, and spirit that traditional Korean architecture and living goods were based on, such as beauty of the nothingness, no boundary between the background and object, and the beauty filled up by emptying, etc., are revived in the modern works in this example. The third, there are many experimental works showing, playing a very active role in changing the principle of man-made environment and product, so-called pattern ranges innovatively. Reaching far behind to find a good pattern lost, they suggest new ways of alternative interface between life and life setting. The conclusion. The current experimental design of Korea is like a spring bud that shoots through earth which had been frozen firmly. Now, by the inspiration of good open thinking and creativity, and growing well in the 21st century climate, which can even be called freedom, I expect that they will play a dynamic role in making a setting that turns our artificial environment into the one that makes us feel the value of life and feel alive. Thank you. This is the end of the presentation for me, and then another presentation will follow. Yeah.
My name is Sohn Joo Minn, and I'm going to show you the little bit of the spaces, urban spaces in Seoul, the capital city of Korea, and then I will show you the series of the works which will reflect the parts of the urban situation. I named the presentation of the presentation as from dictator to people, from masterpieces to product, and which means that I spend more time dealing with the individual and somehow very trivial aspects of the clients of my project. And rather than making a grand masterpiece these projects represents each individual person's characteristic. And this is the scene probably you already know from the World Cup 2002. It's we all dressed up in red color and we called ourselves as Red Devil. And this was the first time that Korean people gathered together not to protect themselves from the foreign invasion, but it was the first time that we got together to play. And I thought that was a very important beginning of our cultural life. Okay, this is the Red Devil. And in previous architecture history, architects always we were given project from the military powers or the capitalists to design their mansions and grand spaces. But now we have to spend more time on designing spaces for the ordinary people. And I somehow analyzed that this grand space has been divided into these two, housing and these rooms which was distributed into the city, and these housing were only the basic spaces for their living spaces, and then all these recreational other functions can be spread out to the city and shared by the citizens. So this is the typical apartment view in the city. And then we like to go to a lot of tea rooms and then spend there many hours enjoying the people. And then sometimes we have to go exercise room, which is not a very grand and fancy exercise rooms, but we have all this exercise room all over the city with the children. And you can see it's in a very common neighborhood environment. And then sometimes we have to go buy lotto tickets. This is called Big Lock Lotto Village. And then you get to buy all these lotto tickets. Or we have this room called game room. It looks like a tea room, but they get to play a lot of these desk games. And DVD rooms. Rather than having your own DVD system, they can go to these DVD rooms and have very intimate hours. Or we have PC rooms. And they all have computer at home, but my sons, they like to go to PC rooms so they can play the internet games. And then there is no age. It has a very broad age people. And then we have this room called Pulse Room. Pulse Room is like a PlayStation room, mainly played for the PlayStation games. And then comic rooms. It's more like a school classroom. And then study rooms. Rather than studying at their room, they all like to go out and study together. I don't know why. And singing rooms. Okay, I have to wait. We enjoy, old people, young people, they all enjoy singing, like these people. And then we have snack rooms all over the city. And then drinking room. We call this one room salon. And some of these room salon comes with the hostesses, like this setting. And we have a room called hot room. It's not exactly sauna, but this is more like a community gathering place for men and women and sometimes children. My sons, they like to go spend overnight in this hot room. And then this is the hot rocks that comes out from the oven, and then we all go and it's like looking into the altar. And temporary rooms, many temporary rooms. And then these temporary rooms comes out from the car. Actually, I had many more images, but I couldn't bring all because of the time limit. This is the same temporary room comes out from the truck. So all the project I have been doing was coming from reading the situation within the city, and I'm going to show you from the temporary structure I have been working on. This was called 100,000 Dreams, and we tried to invite 50,000 South Korean children and 50,000 North Korean children, and this is Haiti Art Valley where Professor Lee explained to you, and this is right near the DMG area, and then that structure you just saw was usually used for the farming situation, and then sometimes I use this scaffolding structure. Now that we look at this structure, temporary structure, not as a trivial structure anymore. Or sometimes we design media exhibition with all these containers. Sometimes we have to do everything from the posters, or this was the Venice Biennale entry with Jang Young-ho, actually with separate project, and it was we portrayed the day of a pickpocket and the way we built it, and then we brought the sound of the city, very trivial sound, everyday life sound. Sometimes I have to work with the city bureaucrats, and I have to convey their taste, what they want to show, which is a lot different from mine. And sometimes I have to deal with the taste of the housewives, which they want to be in like a movie. So it became this project was a product for Hansem Kitchen Company, and it became one of the most popular product. And I expanded all this kitchen furniture out all over the house. So the whole house becomes the kitchen. Or sometimes I have to work with health food. I design franchise stores for this Hangyeore company. And then I have to deal with a very low limit budget and how to make the best out of it. And I have to find their shop site, or how they market their product. Sometimes I have to work with a boutique shop for the rich family. This was more like attracting rich housewives by having nothing outside. The more expensive store tends to have a very cool and very harsh appearance, and the cheap store tends to go out to get the people in. So this was to make very harsh appearance. Okay. So when the wealthy housewives comes to this place, they wonder what's happening, and then very harsh environment, very kind fashion designer comes out and then make them very warm, welcoming, to make the price of the clothes higher. Okay. And I have to deal with all these artworks he collects. Sometimes I have to work with the coffee shop franchise people, and then I have to teach them how to drink coffee, and I have to make the price of the coffee, and then sometimes I have to provide them with the menus of the coffee shop. So for us, there is no boundary line between architecture and outside design. It belongs to, our work area belongs to everywhere. Sometimes I have to deal with this very discrete area, which was very uncomfortable for me in the beginning. And this was, they have to make a very outgoing appearance on the top, but very discrete entrance. So the person can hide in very fast. And they have to separate exit, and nobody can look into the building. This is the very discrete entrance, and there is another separate entrance on the other side, so they can separate and live out together. And then this is another love hotel. So we provide pocket space for them to hide when there is another couple in the hallway. Or the rooms has to be like a very unusual room, so they can have a very another movie-like loving space. Or this was a house for the rental house for the foreigners, and then the house had to look new all the time because it was rented out for many years. So. And then the house has to utilize the whole the land area to make the maximum area. So this is sunken garden to bring the light into the underground space. And then they always have to have a grand view out to the city to make the price of the house more expensive. Or this client, he wanted to have a house that invites the Eastern Feng Shui spirit, which comes from this side east, west to the house, and then this extended wing will embrace all this Eastern Feng Shui spirit, and then brings it down to the couple's room. That if they have a baby in this room, then Feng Shui master says they will become an amazingly great person. So this house was fully to bring down the spirit onto the house. And then we also had to somehow employ the Korean traditional wall. And then he also wanted to have a very big looking, very large scale looking house, so we extended out the wooden deck toward the garden to make it look more bigger, and to even this dining room can be combined together as a living space. Or sometimes I have to read the individual family members' need, and this was a house for a child who has autism. And his symptom is he wants to walk around the whole day, and he cannot stand any enclosed space. So all the wall has to be opened, and then he has all this walkway, and he wants to be on the top. So the whole house was just to cure his symptom of this walking ramp. And the child was running, and then this is the entrance only for the child. And then the whole family has to sleep together because he always runs around and runs away, so they have to catch him. So this is his observation tower. Or then we have to also deal with maximum volume for the one room. We call one room. It's a studio housing. And it has to deal with how to achieve the maximum volume and then maximum price of individual unit. So this is more like a calculus, that how to provide the stairs to use up the minimum space and then make maximum interior space. And then usually in this case, the entrance, the facade becomes the parking area. So this parking space has to look differently than any other building. And then individual rooms. Or sometimes I have to deal with rich people's villa. We call villa. It's more bigger apartment. And then they wanted to renovate very messy space, and I produced them a gallery entrance space. And after we finished this project, they also worked with the Feng Shui master, and the owner of this apartment became the minister. So they believed the Feng Shui was really working on this building. And then after many smaller and medium-sized projects, right now we are working more on resort town, which looks exactly like some housing area in New Jersey. Or then sometimes I work with an amusement park, which looks like a animation town. And that's what our public wants right now. And rather than looking down on their taste, I want to appreciate what they like, and I want to help, I want to grow with them together to our more so-called better taste in the future. And this was like a model house for Hyundai Development Company. And this is where they sell out their units. And then we had to go through a series of competition projects, and this was one project we won. And then we also have to deal with how those apartments will change according to their age. And then we are designing the new product for their entrance project. I'm over the time. And then I also have to, the president, chairman, he suddenly wanted to have a butterfly project. So we come up with many different Korean butterflies, and we are working with a sculpture of butterfly or paintings of butterfly or many community programs related to butterfly. Okay, so at that time in World Cup we gathered to play, and now these days Korean people are gathering together to make their voice listened by other people. So right now we are still growing up, and my design firm and my people will grow up to, I don't know, better taste in the future. Thank you. This was
So, hello everyone. We'll just continue right away. I enjoyed a couple of Korean architects, designers' presentation myself, because I'm not really from Korea. I mean, I am from Korea, but I just flew from California. On my way, I visited Germany for CeBIT, the IT trade show. That's one of the largest in the world. And there you see lots of companies, lots of countries competing against each other. And now we have a major brand's name for Korean companies like Samsung, LG, iRiver, and so on and so forth. I think, you know, I am a little confused, to be honest, okay, because everyone here seems to be architect slash such. I don't know who am I. You know, I don't know who I am, actually, in this group, to be honest. A little confused. I started from last night thinking, why am I here? I mean, the one reason is because Professor Lee invited me, and AA invited me as well. Actually, I have a trouble when I fill in the, like an immigration card, when you arrive in the different countries, you have to fill in the little blank which says occupation. So sometimes I put CEO because I'm CEO, president of Inno Design of California, America. Sometimes I put designer, but then I don't know if that's really my occupation. I think I am a dreamer, if anything, because I am part designer, I'm part inventor, I'm part entrepreneur. Because I am the kind of person who is going to create when who needs one. I mean, there are lots of cases where all of us in our lives that we need something, we want to have something, we need some tools, products, what have you. And I know that lots of people start looking, and when they don't find it, they just give it up, right? In my book, I create it. If I need something, I end up creating it. You will see some product that I created, like the Traveler's Golf Bag. That was designed for me, but then sold to others. Zipper that locks, that's being developed right now. And the notebook that turns, that's in process of development. Such as all that kind of thing is my philosophy of design. Design is to create, design is to, find the needs and give them answer to it and such. Particularly in this century, 21st century, I believe that this mathematics gonna work, as you can see there, digital plus design equal dreams come true. So it's a new mathematics, okay? D plus D equals D. That's because in the analog age, like a few years ago, say 20th century, even though you wanted something, it would have been very difficult, takes long time to develop. All of a sudden, in the last 10 years, IT and digital technology has come up and it's been changing our lives very rapidly. The reason being that in the past, in analog age, even though you as a designer might have a great idea, all right, it takes long time to go to manufacturer, convince them. It will never happen. It would take years to happen. So it wasn't very easy. That was my first 10 years of design business. But then last 10 years of my business, I changed it around. And instead of waiting for my clients to come and ask me to do some project, I've been thinking first and designing first, then going to the client and telling them about my ideas. Recently, like I said, digital technology has made it all brilliantly possible with whatever idea you might have. You can see the lots of mobile phones, MP3 players, digital TVs on the wall. I mean, everything is changing our lifestyle. So digital and design combines and makes dreams come true. I've been thinking what design is. I started design, and when I was 16 years old, sort of by accident, I pulled some magazine from my friend's house, and then the book title was Industrial Design. I didn't know what that was all about, but then immediately I knew that was what I wanted to do for my life, for my career. Then I got interested in, hooked up with design since that time. Then went to USA from Korea for my college education and such. But I've been thinking and using lots of times the language design. We talk design, we say design, design, design. But then when I thought about it, I wasn't sure what the definition of design might be. So first I thought I wanted to know, which is a question mark there, but then I was so impressed and excited about understanding what design was all about. Design is emotional logic. Design to me is an emotional logic. It's like you can enjoy, you can appreciate nice looking sports car, for example. It's red, it's sexy, it's nice looking, and it's Porsche. But then that's the emotional part that we like. But then we also like the speed and the convenience, comfort, and then all the function of it, all the beauty and function of it. That's the logical side of it. So to me, design is 50% emotional and the other 50% logical, which makes us be sort of perfect, meaning we are given like two different parts of the logical side of brain as well emotional side of brain. And to become a designer in doing so, I learned that it has to work both ways. It has to look good, it has to work right. But then I found out the real definition of design by the books or dictionaries was making change. Design by definition is making change. So what it seems, what it tells me, what it means to all of us in our lives is that design will never end, because in our life we always want to change. We want to look different. We want to do different stuff. We want to live differently, different house, different fashion, and different devices and all that. But then design is also loving others, and this was based on my personal experience. A couple of years ago, my son, on his Mother's Day, he probably was too busy or didn't have money enough to go out and buy some present, card or anything. He stayed up, all night, and then next day at Mother's Day, for Mom's Day, he gave his mom, my wife, a little present. And that was a little coupon. It's like about this size, little coupon. And the coupon said on the cover, for Mom on Mother's Day. And then we opened up the cover, and then it says, washing dishes. That's what the coupon says. And then it says expiration in 2 weeks. That's coupon. He wanted to give her something, service. Then next page says, cleaning Mom's car, and it says 3 weeks expire. And it goes on and on and on. You're walking the dog and, cleaning the house and all that. But the best part of the coupon was the last page, which made my wife cry. And what it said was, loving mother, loving mom. And it says expiration forever. So at that point, my wife was crying. I was almost so emotionally, involved in all that. Then I realized that that's design. That's design. What he did was a brilliant design, because he, as a designer, made his mom, the client, be very happy. And this is design. From there on, I thought, design is loving others. If I know the customer and the user of the design that I'm doing, if I really love them, then my design will be successful. Among my works, first some digital designs, such as the MP3 player that you are looking at. Nothing, no big deal. This is a smaller, better looking, I hope, and very popular. This client of mine sold about 1 million of this MP3 player. But what's important on this picture is that this company came to me and asked for design. The CEO of this company asked for free service of design. And it isn't possible. We have a big client, so busy. But this guy had a very, true business, gentleman style, lots of ideas, great technology, and he says, what he's lacking is design. His company can do anything. Only I can help him in designing. He said, we both can be very successful. So at that point, I decided that I invest my design. So I wouldn't let him pay me anything. I made him to use my design freebie. And we started that 2 years ago, and this company grew 30 times bigger in 2 years, and they become world #1 right now, better, bigger than Sony. And this is a 2-year history. This company is 5 years old, but exactly 2 years ago, he came to see me in my Palo Alto design studio, and we changed the story, changed the history of the company. And there are some more products that we've been designing for this same client. And this one, I saw this one also in Hanover show yesterday. I was told that they sold 1.1 million units of this during last 1 year time period. So what design is that it's no longer the finishing touch. Design is the way to make profit for lots of companies. And it's interesting to recognize that my last 20 years of professional career is in parallel with the Korea in their change and in their development. Some of you might remember Korea brand name way back 20 years ago, but at that point you might remember as just a manufacturer. Because at that point, lots of companies, even the biggest ones that exist right now, back then was just OEM manufacturers, if you know what I mean by that. Original equipment manufacturers who did not have a brand necessarily, just making it for the sake of making it, with a tiny little margin. But that was 20 years ago. My company is 19 years older now. As I started my company, I began traveling to Korea once a month almost. So far I have 150 round trips that I made from California to Korea, which is a lot of miles and a lot of flying. But during that 20 years, the Korea, is changing. They're very strong in IT, information technology. They're very strong in design. They're very strong in branding. So combining with the technology, design, and branding, I mean, Korea is something that you're going to hear and see a lot of times. These are among, most of those kind of projects. I run pretty quickly, but the only reason why I want to talk a little bit about this product is that it's got some interesting story behind it. You might remember the very first slide or a portfolio that I showed you had a similar look as MP3 player, just like that. Now, the only difference in this one is that it's got camera built in it as the first ever for MP3 of its kind. That's no big deal. I mean, anybody can invent that. But what I want to talk a little bit about is how did I get this idea is very interesting. Because last summer, I took my family and we went to Maui, and we happened to walk into the Four Seasons Hotel, and wearing that MP3 player that I designed around my neck. And the waitress says like, "Hey, you have a very beautiful digital camera with you." And that immediately told me something. It wasn't digital camera, but in my mind, what he said was, yes, it could become a digital camera. So like I said, if I need one, if I want one, instead of waiting, I would go ahead and design. So during an hour of dinner, I was sketching on the napkin, and I faxed it to my design studio. 1 month later, we completed the design, and we brought this to the client, who now is introducing during last week, Hanover Sabbath convention. So this will be out on the market almost like next week. So that's the design process. You get inspired from anywhere, anytime. And this is another design that is following with same kind of category. It's a wearable MP3. Personally, I believe this is beautiful. I hope that some of you might agree, and the buyers agree. Best Buy from USA is thinking about this as a major product. And this is a new technology which they call PMP, Portable Media Player. So pretty soon with the Microsoft OS program, you can do lots of things in handheld. This is going to have a 3.5 diagonal color TFT screen with navigations for playing games, and you can do just about everything. You can watch movie, you can receive video clips, and then play games and listening to music and all that. This is the world. This is the change now taking place. This one is another interesting design of my own, so I thought I'd put it in here. And the phone itself was designed by Samsung design team. When I first saw it, it did not have that game thing as detachable part. I thought about it, and immediately again I created it. I gave it to Samsung, and they made it, and it's become a hot, big hit product. What it is just a simple plastic with the keys that is designed as player of game, which can attach to existing phone itself. But then this is another example that this began from designer, not from the other way around. That's this digital world where it's all possible. This one, it might be, some of you might have seen it, pretty popular in the Europe. They sold 2.5 million of it. This is also another phone design that I did for Samsung. And this is the interesting, innovative design that I did. This is a camcorder, but digital camera. So what it is you can swing the lens part, and you can use it as both camcorder and the digital camera, still camera. This was done some time ago, like year 2000, but it was done for Sprint through LG. LG's manufacturing at that point for Sprint brand name. Was a winner of the Business Week. Lifestyle design. I think I'm running out of time. I'm going to make quick. Lifestyle design is, my latest project is the design collection under my own brand by I mean, the most of the design that I showed you has somewhere tiny little word of design by which is the client brand and sub-brand of design by And then the next program that I'm doing is by of our design, made by anybody, anywhere. So this happened to be made by German company, but under our own brand of by This is a golf bag that I designed about 15 years ago, which won a lot of awards. And this is what I was talking about. When I needed my own golf bag that I can fly with, I couldn't find one that I liked, so I thought I'd design it. And this kind of things caused a lot of problem at that point, because I got overexcited, invest $500,000 of tooling and all that. But that is experience. That's what's happening. Our design company, our studio is in Palo Alto, California. Another one in Korea. Seoul, Korea, the studio is only about 5 years old, but they do lots of this graphics, packaging, design, and such. These are continuation of those consumer products and buy products. This is what I personally involved in lately very much. I love Korean flag. I found very modern image from our own flag, Korean flag. I believe that Korean flag has two different lines in it. It's soft lines and hard lines. And I realized that it's like Korean people personality. They are soft, they are hard. I mean, it's interesting. So I use that for the collection of my own product design, such as this. I think we have too many to show. It takes a lot of time. This was the design done 1993, which won the IDEA Gold Award from USA. Simple, the portable gas cooker, but that looks like lobster. And this is some electronics, the tool, LG Dio's refrigerator done 5 years ago. Still, they modify a little and selling ton of it. And lastly, I have some concept design to show you. As I said, design is loving others. And this was also from my personal experience. When I drove around my home in California, there are lots of people, bicycling, and I almost, caused a big accident, which luckily I was able to stop my car pretty quick. Immediately, I thought about why don't they have a rear view, camera, and if they had a digital camera in the back with a head-up display on the goggle, we could save lots of lives. And this is the another example of what I needed. I couldn't find one, so I designed it. I got a patent on these kind of things, and also got a design award. This one is the lockable zipper. I thought, I've been traveling so much, and then I needed to lock my either computer case or luggage and stuff. And at one time, I thought, why there isn't any zipper which can lock easily? So again, I got overexcited. I ended up designing it and prototyped it and all that. This got a award from IDSA also, but the bigger award that I received from this experience was that when I went to the IDSA conference back then, I saw lots of people around this tiny little model. I mean, comparing with the car designs and all that, is very tiny. But then there was lots of people, so I went in and kind of joined them, just enjoyed, and I overheard that the guys next to me was talking to each other and says, why didn't I think of it? And to me, that's the biggest award. Notebook computer, I needed to turn it around sometimes, so I also invented, patented, and designed, under development right now. And behind there's another small screen, so you and I both can look at it in small conference. This is a phone and PDA together. So the final word, design is a tool for value innovation. I think the new marketing word, today is the value innovation. And it's no longer competition, it's only by creation, and design is a tool for value innovation. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Good. Now we'll move on to Australia. Mick Keniger from Queensland will be making the next presentation. Mick Keniger. Out of interest to you, Mick and I did first year together here.
Sometime since I spoke here, as Ken said, he and I go back a long way, and in recent years a special pleasure for me is that Ken has been an extraordinary ambassador for not just Asian architecture, but for the AA in Asia and also for Australia. And I'm very grateful to you, Ken, for inviting me as part of this session to represent Australia. And also I'd like to thank Moisen for both hosting the event and for providing some impetus. I was teaching here. I was a student here. I did the whole of my diploma here. And I was teaching here with Britt Anderson. We ran a unit which we took over. Britt originally taught with John Fraser, Unit 5 in the intermediate school. And I left for Australia in 1978. And I always remember I left with Alvin's voice ringing in my ears, Alvin Boyowski. Those who know him would remember that Alvin was very passionate about the teachers that he felt that he trained and the ideas that he felt that he inspired. And his one message to me as I walked out of the AA to this new world for me was, Mick, what are you doing, spending the rest of your life doing missionary work? And to him it was an absolute horror that Australia was so far away and so unknown that how could we, Britt and then I, commit to this new place. And when I went knowing zero about the place, except for the most superficial and obvious. And the thing about Australia, I think, it's almost a tragedy in the way which it underrates the qualities of the place and the qualities of what is achieved. So you find about as much as I knew about Australia was what you see on this slide, that there was Ayers Rock, there was a big bridge which I thought was in Sydney, it turned out to be there, thank goodness. There was an opera house, I didn't think there were two of them, but you know, there could have been, I didn't know. And somewhere to land, these curious trees, which I eventually found came from Norfolk Island, not too far away, and some fairly kind of atrocious. I was amused about the point you made about taste, and the kind of fairly garish attitude to some aspects of design. So there was a kind of voyage of discovery in a way. And I thought what might be useful today is to kind of give a report card on the many alumni from the AA that have contributed to the culture of architecture in the place in Australia over the last 25 years and the ways they've gone about that. Just to remind people how important a strong school is. And that, I think, is the principal virtue of this place. I'm sorry to put this up because I'm sure you all know where Australia is, but I really put it up to remind you just how big it is. It is virtually the same size as the United States of America in area. It has a population that's just about now hit 20 million, which is not as big as Mexico City, you know, which is 23 or 24 million. Most of that population lives from round about where I live, which is Brisbane, somewhere around about here, Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra, somewhere in between, and Perth, which is feeling very lonely, the nearest neighbour being Singapore for Perth. But this is a vast country with a huge kind of void and of the place. And the thing which is hard to appreciate until you live there is the extraordinary power of the landscape. I mean, we discuss landscape in the way that we teach as a kind of cerebral thing, but in Australia it is so vast and so strong, so ancient, that it's absolutely visceral. You cannot help but your emotions coming to the fore. So this landscape is just to the north of my city, which is Brisbane in Queensland. Queensland, I'll just take you back, sorry, is a state here which is about 22 times the area of England, 7 times the area of Texas, and 2 hours flying gets you to about there, and that is very close to the equator, which is running somewhere up there. That's Cape York. I'll show you that little tip in a moment. So it's an extraordinary place, a whole new area to be discovered, and this is the tip of Cape York, the very top, and it's absolutely beautiful in a kind of in every sense that you can imagine beauty to be. And it's a landscape. I grew up in London, and I was amused today. I got off the plane this morning at 5:30 or whatever, and straight into grey, cold drizzle, which is how I remember life in London. And, you know, in this landscape, you get these extraordinary fires. This is actually, this is bush cane, you know, deliberately lit to drive out the bugs and so on. Or the serenity, I mean, a little piece of water in a very dry landscape, it makes a fantastic transition, and then you get amazing skies and so on. Experiences I never had in London. The cities which are, I really did appreciate the Korean examples, because the cities in Australia think they're big, but they're not. They're actually tiny in world terms. Brisbane is about 1.8 million. I'm looking here, you've got this slow meandering river which somehow makes it to the ocean. And and off there are some wonderful islands. And Sydney is about 3 million and so on. But the thing about our city is Brisbane, with its population of 1.5, 1.8, covers the same area as Los Angeles. It's a very low density sprawl. And I'm very amused that our city centre, which is that little kind of patch there, actually is kind of a block in one of your diagrams. You know, it's like quite extraordinary to see the shift in scale. But the thing about the city is that they're very young. They didn't exist at all 200 years ago. And that it's like the first mapping of the land. So everything is done, there's a kind of youthful kind of risk to it all. And you get the sense that much of it will need to be remade as time goes by. It's like the first mark, just another view of the same city. And the architecture that we found there was very vestigial. It's open. This is a prefabricated form of timber construction made of hardwood. These are single skin walls. It depends totally on being open to the environment. There's no corridors or passages. Everything, all circulation's on the veranda. All eating is on the veranda. The kitchen's over there in a separate building, because if that burns down, the house doesn't burn down. You know, it's like that. It's lifted off the ground. The breezes go under the ground. It's very kind of fragile. And Rem Koolhaas, when he came through, described the city and its architecture as possessing this kind of extraordinary sense of flimsiness, of fragility, which goes through, and this openness to the subtropical climate. And sometimes it piles up in this kind of Baroque excess of carpenter's willpower. You know, it just goes on and on, of steps and layers and verandas and so on. The first house I lived in was designed by an AA graduate, Rex Addison, who's from Brisbane, and he was going up to Papua New Guinea to establish a practice. So I lived in this little timber hut, and you could not but live outside, that you could not close the doors and protect yourself in the way that you do in an English house, because you just would not survive. It was too hot. You had to live outside on the deck, which is out back there. And the house kind of wraps around, very thin plan that wraps around, climbs up to make it kind of mimic the traditional houses of the place, but actually work around these series of stepped courtyards. I was very lucky to have that experience. And Rex has gone on. He's probably one of the finest architects at work in Brisbane at the moment. This is his studio, and you can see already in the construction that I'm sure that in certainly in Malaysia and other tropical places, you can use quite different materials. There's not the sense that you have to worry as much about U values and K values and so on. So these buildings breathe. They're made of thin, light materials, often single skin. What you see on the outside is also what you get on the inside. When we arrived 24 years ago, it was very hard, certainly in a place like Brisbane, to get things going. It was hard to find tutors because there was not a way of teaching that used the kind of model we were used to at the AA. So one thing to do is to energize the place by bringing friends and colleagues and other ideas through, and we arranged a conference. This is Pancho Geddes, who would have spoken here many times, I imagine, and Paul Oliver from England. They came through, and over the years we've had a series of visitors, including Ingrid Morris, Peter Cook, Chris MacDonald, Paul Shepard, Jean Sillett, and so on, a whole range of people that kind of enriched the culture there. And we also attracted over time a range of graduates from the AA, Leon van Skyke, Haig Beck, and Jackie Cooper. Jackie was Australian. Jackie used to have Peter's job, standing behind the rack, running the slideshows and so on. We attracted Tom Hennigan very recently, Geoffrey London, who runs Western Australia's School of Architecture. And what was interesting to me is that of the 15 schools of architecture in Australia, if you look across those schools, there are 7 professors, all of whom got their training or part of their training here. Leon van Skyke being probably one of the most notable. This is Tom Hennigan hanging onto a balcony in one of his Japanese buildings, who was appointed 2 years ago to Sydney. It helps to have friends. I was on the selection committee, which would have opened some door for him. But Tom is remarkable, and he brings experience of really wonderful buildings in really wonderful landscapes. And I thought just what Australia needed to know. This is his Grasslands Research Institute at Kumamoto. Peter Cook came through as our visiting professor in 1983. And Peter, if you know him, is hyperactive. He will not sit still. And he insisted on doing a drawing, and he did this wonderful drawing, which is about half the size, about this size, of bridges for Brisbane. He just went feral, you know, just drawing bridges and bridges and bridges. And probably what he doesn't know is that we actually started building them. This is one of them. And 2 graduates of mine, Ingrid Richards and her colleague, this was the first project they did after leaving my school, University of Queensland, which is the new pedestrian footbridge across the Brisbane River. This is the opening day, and so on. So that there is an impact of the ideas which are carried forward, and so on. There's also an impact in teaching practice, so that we do things like we produce our version of the projects review. This is the cover of a recent one. We introduced exhibitions which never used to occur, and so on. The other thing that we insisted on is that we should be exemplary in what we do. We should try and influence others through the quality of what we do. And Britt Anderson last year, who's my colleague and co-professor at the University of Queensland, won the Australian Gold Medal. It's the first woman and only the second academic to win it in the 40 years of the medal. This is a little house on Stradbroke Island that we did for a client, Jenny Henke. It's a tiny little thing. It was a bit like the tree house we saw this morning. This is a place to eat, this is the place to sleep, and this is the place where you watch the whales go by and the ocean beyond. It opens entirely to the climate. There's no way that you could possibly air condition this building whatsoever. Every part of it is open to view and to being viewed. On the very next site is Britt's own house that she designed with her husband, Peter O'Gorman. This is only 3.6 meters wide. It's just a sliver of a house that is as transparent as possible. Again, like the tree house. You just add cladding where you need it, as little cladding as you might need. This is Britt putting a veil over the fruit to keep the flies off, the famous Australian flies. And even though it's a tiny building, there are many lessons about making and materiality and about light and about positioning on a site which can be learned from. So this is the house at its most transparent. There's this kind of crow's nest dining room up here, a place to read and sleep down here, and the dining room to one side. This is my daughter, it's Britt's daughter, is strung out between the banksia trees and so on. Now, it's pushing what you can do in this climate to the limit and inventing new ways of using material. This is a transparent, translucent dulcinite sheeting. Just what is the minimum you need to keep the world at bay, the elements out, and so on. This is a recent house by Britt and Peter, the last house they did before Peter died, which was 2 years ago. And these are, in fact, this is 2 houses, and one of the problems we've got is, as our population ages, how do you think about the way in which people will live rather than the way they've had to live? And we've got the luxury of being able to think that through. So these 2 houses, this is for one elderly lady, this is for her companion. They like living beside each other but not with each other, you know what I mean? So that they're these 2 houses that share a view of the world but don't have to look at each other. But the idea for this building is that the courtyard between, if you can imagine the red line tracing the courtyard behind, is meant to be the site of some really wonderful trees, so that in time this will have a green heart and a green courtyard that these spaces will look into. Very disciplined piece of work, just excellent. One of the special pleasures of being a teacher and an architect is what effect you have through the work of your graduates. And now what we're seeing in Australia, or I'd like to think what we're seeing, is a strength in Queensland produced by the young practices. This is a firm called Donovan Hill. This is the Sea House, which has been illustrated quite widely in Domus and elsewhere internationally. It's quite remarkable. It's their first house. It's a huge concrete palace which somehow they managed to get under control. These sliding walls, that's a sliding window in a wall that slides so that the whole view opens out. And they have a remarkable control, despite being very young, of kind of artifice and surface and material and the quality of making, which is quite extraordinary. I organised a visit and publication and some exhibitions for Jeffrey Bawa, another luminary of the AA, a graduate of the 50s. And Jeffrey visited the house. He could only make it up to this level because of the difficulty with his, he was fairly ill at the time. But you get some sense of the quality of the detailing and making from just that shot. Also by the same architects is this tiny house, the D house, which is just, actually it's in the street behind me, a very reticent single height wall to the street, one single window which just slides away to reveal the inside to the outside and somehow kind of civilizes the little street that they live in. And then the house within is almost, I'm standing in one courtyard looking through to another courtyard, and the room is just as kind of reticent, it's like a lining of the space rather than be dependent on furniture within the space. So this tiny project was being done at the same time as the very large project. And then the difficult thing is, how do you turn that in ideas for houses into ideas for housing? And this is a scheme by the same firm. I'm just trying to keep the number of the examples restricted so you can see some progression. But the same firm working with multi-residential housing. We're standing in a 3-story house. These are little 2-person apartments that come out with their own kind of balcony shrouded here. And then there's a little kind of 1-bedroom flat with axe, a bit like the chauffeur's house above the garage as you arrive, the house in the porch. So there's new ideas coming out of that. The other kind of tradition, probably transferred from the AA, was that kind of interest in what Peter Cook calls lyrical, the works of the lyrical mechanic. And this building here in Sydney is by Renzo Piana, and the key project architect and the key driver, because Renzo couldn't be there the whole time obviously, was Ken McBride, who is a graduate of our school. And you can see in ideas, this is a suspended glass canopy. I won't show you the whole building, but this is just how you arrive. And in the very first thing you meet, you get some sense of the ideas for the making of the overall building. It's one of the few high-rise buildings in Australia which is actually innovative in the way it's clad. Again, the conversation we had earlier about the difficulty of making good skins, good sheaths, good membranes for high-rise buildings. That work's being done there. The kind of fascination with kind of the good idea, something that Tom Keniger was always terrific at, was a really wonderful idea that would win a competition. This is another AA she didn't graduate here, but she did her fourth year here, Annabelle Lars, doing a temporary overlay for the Olympic site. I'm not sure if this is a playroom or a soft room or whatever, but it certainly fits into the genre. And this is a series of kind of screens, hoardings, banners, displays, information towers that were used temporarily whilst the Olympics were under construction, so parts of the site could be occupied by the public for other kinds of show. My role, I was saying to Tom earlier that I decided that as a professor, rather than trying to sustain practice for myself, probably better to try and influence others than to open up opportunities. So I worked as an advisor to the Olympics for 4 years, trying to uplift the quality of design for that. And there's some really curious events during the Olympic Games themselves, like these huge display screens where you've got water beside the harbour on which there are boats bigger than any of the buildings in the city, all happening, these strange conjunctions, which was quite exciting. In our city, leisure and the beach seem to fill the Australian mind more than it should. And so our city somehow has acquired a kind of central beach that looks over the river back to the city proper. And behind that is a kind of series of follies. This is a 1.8 kilometre long, eventually shaded arbour of bougainvillea. This is just starting out a year or two ago. But the idea to provide kind of strong reference marks within the city. Again, this kind of collision between public space and commercial space, and cities trying to make up what it is they're about in the subtropics. This is the principal shopping street in Brisbane, and which was pedestrianised about 20 years ago, and I ran a series of exercises which saw the stripping out of the space and the creating new shade structures and pergolas and planting that was trying to embody more of what was possible in our subtropical climate. The other end of Australia, down in climate that's a bit like London at the moment, in Melbourne, Leon van Skyk, who arrived in the late 80s, has done a fantastic job in elevating the quality of architecture in that city and the culture of architecture. This is a view from Denton Gawker Marshall's exhibition centre, looking back at the city centre proper. This is one of the few works that he teaches at RMIT, Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, and one of the first buildings that they commissioned under his direction was Building 9 by Peter Corrigan and Madigan, and it's kind of mannerist and decorative and pumped up and extreme, much more so that you would have found in the kind of typical Melbourne development. On this project, which is in Canberra, the energy coming out of Leon's Melbourne School and my contribution as advisor to the jury and then running the quality process of the contract helped bring about the new Museum of Australia on Acton Peninsula. This is a view at night, obviously. This is the entry. The architects were Ashton Raggett and McDougall, and I was really surprised that the client agency took this on, because it was a very brave and ambitious project. I'll come back to some of the difficulties, but this is the curve. As you can imagine, most of it depends on digital initial design. Then the actual execution depended on a very clever contract, which I can talk about separately. This is the principal courtyard, and it's kind of a riot of kind of graphic excess in one way or another. I've not mentioned, because it's such a difficult issue, but one of the problems in dealing with the landscape is also establishing a relationship with the indigenous and Aboriginal culture of Australia, which left no edifices. I mean, it had an extreme and subtle relationship with the land and the ordering of the land, but wasn't a culture that depended on making monuments and so on. So one of the problems that Australia colonials, the Australian colonial tradition has, is kind of recognising the difficulties of the indigenous culture. And there was a public fight between our Prime Minister, John Howard, who refused to apologise for the way in which Aboriginals have been treated. He refused to say sorry and to come to terms with some of the damage that had been done. And you might see these dots all over the elevation, and these are actually braille patterns embossed into the aluminium of the surface, and many of them say things like typical Australian phrases like throw another prawn on the barbie or something like that, or talk about the latest motor car, or what a great Sheila, or things like that. But actually through here is a whole series that just say sorry, sorry, sorry. And of course when the government found out that this was over their National Museum, they were all hell broke loose. So these chrome dots were added. They're like car hubs that were added to break up the brailles, to diffuse the meaning, in full knowledge that they can always be removed, so sorry can be recognised. There are all sorts of kind of, and if you know the work of Ashton Rackett McDougall, there are always little references to other things. This is a reference to the glazing that was applied to the Sydney Opera House after Utzon was removed as the architect. This is the Gallery of Australian Aboriginal Australia, and the plan of that is a reference back to the Berlin Museum by Libeskind. The interior is an extraordinary space which is actually made by a kind of writhing knot of space that weaves through the solid block of the form and to create this kind of what they describe as a Boolean cave. And this was a most extraordinary thing to try and construct, because there was no way of, you can see there's no structure evident, and it's not a structural form. So in fact it's draped, suspended from the principal structure, and the external skin is draped around the outside. So this is building about surface and the way in which surface is dressed, I suppose. This is the opening day, a big party. Nothing wrong with good parties and having fun and so on. The other major project by where the AA can claim its alumni to have taken hold is Don Bates and Peter Davidson's Federation Square. This is Don Bates, a visiting professor for us working. This is another AA alumni who practice in Queensland, Jerry Murta, who used to be taught by Paul Shepherd and so on. And Don is a really excellent teacher. Don and Peter together are formidable, but Don in particular is a very excellent teacher. And this building has caused Melbourne a lot of kind of angst, but it's a remarkable achievement. Again, coming back to the issue of surface, this manages to kind of somehow do it all, and somehow they found the money. This is a very expensive skin. I think it's about, I don't know what it is in pounds, it's about $2,000, £2,000 a square metre for the elevation. And the reason for that is that the elevation is about 2 metres deep, and you'll see the structure of that in a moment. And it's the cladding is this very special sandstone, glass and zinc panels, and they're treated as if they were the one thing. It's like it's almost as if you like origami that you coloured. You flattened out the paper of the origami and then you coloured it and said sandstone, glass and zinc. There's virtually very little that differentiates it in terms of the way it's held together, poised in space or whatever. So it was controversial. There were these kind of smaller buildings called the Shards, and it stands in front of a quite important cathedral. A lot of fuss about one of these shards being too high. The Premier of the state insisted it be made lower, so now we've got a kind of sawn off lump. But the remarkable thing, this is the structure of the kind of it's like probably what would be called a winter garden here. It's kind of glazed arcade, which is the principal entry to the major art gallery and other spaces. And it's a kind of super redundant structure. It's about complexity in a literal sense. And if you like, a challenge to the expectation that somehow structure should be about a singularity of order. So you can see it's working on a double layer twisted grid, clad in this case on both the inside and the outside, and the pillow between helping to deal with climatic variation, orientation, and so on. And at first, in many ways, possibly a disturbing space because you're trying to make sense of it, and then a very kind of sensual space as you kind of relax and find your place within it. This is, if you can imagine, the plan has got several fingers, and this is the next space along between the fingers of the key concert hall. This is the little concert hall, lecture theatre, and in this case the glazed skin actually zips in and out of the two layers of structure. So it's a kind of remarkable contribution to the city that challenges the expectation as to what public space should be. And I mean, just in summing up, I think that most of our effort as AA alumni in Australia has been to try and work through the education system first that helps to build the culture that produces the graduates and raises the expectation of the community as a whole as to what is possible, or both in terms of private space and in terms of public space. And I suppose that's our singular contribution. And I should just finish by saying it's very much a kind of work in progress. There's still much to be done, and we look forward to many of you hopefully visiting us over the years to come. Thank you.
Great, thanks. We'll stop this from being too much of a marathon. We were going to have a 10-minute break. We'll come back in 10 minutes. Which is 12, so, yeah.